you know, just because then it's over there and the whole world can see it, and maybe you have, you know, and that's really exposing you to everybody. So that's a condition that even something so innocent, just because of the digital thing, just because we can then search things and address and have the ability to store huge amount of information and analyze it. On the one hand, it will revolutionize the social sciences. On the other hand, it poses very, very big problems in terms of our relationship with the public and with the outside. It can be something so innocent as
That's one of the big research projects that we do in transport media, actually. Invisibility is very popular. Another question with one of the members of the studies, urban studies.
Okay, we can continue. I have a couple of other things to mention, but we continue later.
My question is related to the previous one. It has to do with the the question of anonymity that you mentioned. A large part of the interest in analyzing data is not only about flows or aggregate numbers, but it's about qualifying the content of the information, and for that you have to relate to some characteristics of the person. Evidently you couldn't do that, but we know that some companies do that. The companies who own the information, if you click something on Amazon, the next time they will suggest something similar to what you bought, etc. So there's clearly there a difficulty for the social science to have access to that type of data, but at the same time it's become an incredible commercial commodity and investment for those companies. Don't you see that as a big problem for this type of research?
Well, it goes back to the same question as before, actually. So, so yes, the data is there, and you know the very scary thing is not really when the data is collected in different pieces, but when everything comes together. So if you just take all the, you know, if you take all the traces, it's about digital traces. The traces you used to leave once upon a time. The photography traces were on paper that would decay and end up in places you can search. There's all these traces we're leaving today. If you just take the traces that they left in the past couple of days, you could reconstruct probably every minute of what I've done. With my credit card, I got a Velib, so I used the Velib and the underground with scanning RFID, and then I used my credit card 5 or 6 times since this morning. And then I've been calling, making calls, so I could be located, everything of my life could be reconstructed if somebody merged a database. That hasn't happened yet, luckily, but it will happen because the data is there, you know, somebody will then do it. Now, as you say, now here you're saying something like, well, this would be great. In a certain sense, you're complaining that, I'm exaggerating. If I take it to the extreme, you're saying, well, as an academic, I wish I could use this. I could really find out wonderful things about humanity if I could get access to this data, and I cannot, and people are using it to make money and to do things that are a bit nasty and I don't like. I think the problem is bigger, is that, and let me tell you how we did it so far. So in our group, we decided that there would be not one bit of personal information that would transit so far. So in the sense that all the data we will get will be anonymous and aggregated. So even if there's a break into our system, whatever this becomes public, there will be no compromise to anybody's. However, I think the problem is bigger. It's really the one I was saying before. What happens when all this data becomes searchable altogether? And I think it's something we need all to address. I know that Bruno is working on that. We're having a big conference at MIT we're organizing called Engaging Data in October, this October, really to bring together the privacy advocates together with the big companies, together with the government, with the Obama administration, and we're bringing all of them together in our group and try to start discussing what we could do in order to address this. Because this is going to happen regardless. And then we'd better be prepared before that's the case.
Those who are actually interested in this, I think, can work with the media for the first time because they are going to write about keeping the same man and then I think the last question would be if we have time.
Yeah, thank you. I have actually two questions and a remark. 2 questions is, I notice also that most of your projects here are actually linked to some events, sometimes even art events. So I wonder, first of all, how do you finance this type of project? And second question, what is the next step? Do you dismantle that and forget it? Or how do you proceed, I would say, to an implementation and industrialization of some of the ideas you have there? Because it's nice to do it for arts, but how do you proceed? What is the business model you have behind to make it something real? And the remark, which is also linked, is well, it's about Singapore, which I happen to know pretty well. I don't totally agree with the remark we heard before, because I think Singapore is a nice place to live, and most of the people there are actually happy to live there. But I think since you are running a project there and knowing a little bit the Singaporean, they certainly have a business case behind. So it could be interesting, maybe you slightly elaborate on the way you work on this project in Singapore, and how do they see, how do they finance, how do they see the implementation of this project in the long term?
Yeah, very good points. The first thing about the arts and the other thing, I need to tell you, this is something that people always get very, very confused. So they come to us and say, so what you are doing, are you, doing art, are you working for the MoMA, or you're what about your scientific paper? Are you engineers? People get confused. But we think it's quite unique in the way we're doing it, and we think it works quite well. The fact that we start with this sort of vision, this, before it was say, this sort of like a Gedanken experiment, of a possible future. And then this, of course, is something that shows you a possibility and has, it's more like has an inspiration, so it has an artistic value. And we'll use it for an event or an exhibition, it could be MoMA, the Biennale, Copenhagen, or something like this. But then that becomes important for us because then we can actually guide the research through this. So it becomes a very good vision to actually guide the technical papers. If you think about the Rome project, it was maybe an art installation, but on the top of that there were probably 15 academic scientific papers being written, both on the platform, on IEEE electrical engineering journals, and on social sciences, on analyzing the data. So that becomes an interesting combination that, as far as I think it's quite unique, the way we're doing it. It happened a bit by chance, but it's working quite well, so we're happy with that. And that is also a bit linked to the business model, in a certain sense, of the projects we're doing. So the business model of the project we're doing is that when you have the MoMA, it's much easier to go to AT&T and say, can you actually give us this anonymized data for a project at the MoMA and for a research project, than if you didn't have the MoMA. So the MoMA becomes like, like in the Matrix, there's that thing with the lady in the red dress. It's a little bit like that. It's something that distracts you, and that says, it gives you a plus that inspires people. One more thing, Bruno, so we were cutting me. That is then related to the thing. So our funding comes for 30% from projects, 30% from big national grants like NSA or similar, and then 30% from a consortium of cities and companies that we have built. Going back to the second question is actually how do you transform this into something that has a business model? So this was our business model for research, but it's not a business model to make it happen. And I don't think this is something we should do. Let me tell you, for instance, the project we did, the WikiCity, the Following Rome, the project that gives the information back to the citizens, we call it WikiCity. And that inspired a lot. One of the most successful startups from MIT that's, last month was called the new Google, that's called Sense Networks in New York. So we are happy that, they took some of these ideas, went ahead, and now they're trying to implement it, this sort of real-time monitoring and sharing of information. It's not what a university should do to actually do the whole thing. If somebody reads about it, reads a paper, sees the exhibition at the MoMA, so gets excited and does a startup, I think that's great. They will make money, will not make money, but that's fine. I think it's good. At one point, we might do also some startups ourselves. We got a lot of venture capital. Boston is one of the top venture capitalist places in the US, so we have a lot of venture capitalists that come regularly and tell us, would you like to implement this idea or this other idea? We haven't done it yet. It's a different life. If you do that, you stop thinking 10 years ahead, and you think more about how to make it. The bicycle might become a product, and but then it would probably be BMW.
So we have a big question, and I suppose that we ask the question that made you answer them in both.
Yes, I will follow the question of Edmond Pretzey about the qualities, because this is something we will have to face in